The great hall smelled like candle wax and old stone, and the kind of silence that only happens when 1,000 people are holding their breath. Seraphine stood at the right side of the king. She had stood there for 3 years. She knew the exact temperature of the air near his shoulder. She knew the sound his boots made on marble, heavy, deliberate, never rushed. She knew the way his jaw tightened when he was calculating something he had already decided. She had learned all of this the way you learn a place you live in, without ever being allowed to call it home. The bonding rite happened every year. Every alpha, beta, and omega in the kingdom gathered in the Iron Spine court. It was old tradition. It meant something once. Now it mostly meant long speeches, and too much wine, and wolves pretending to feel things they had stopped feeling years ago. Seraphine watched the crowd instead of the ceremony. She noticed the man at the far edge of the hall first, because he was not watching the king. Every other wolf in the room had their eyes on Calum. This man was watching her. He was broad across the shoulders, dark-haired, calm, in a way that felt earned rather than performed. Northern Pack, she guessed from the color of his coat. She did not know his name yet. She filed his face away and looked back at the ceremony. Calum said something beside her. She did not catch the words. She caught the tone. Her wolf caught the tone before she did. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for weeks, and she had been choosing not to look directly at it, the way you avoid looking at a crack in a wall because looking at it makes it real. She looked at it now. Calum stepped forward. He turned to address the assembly, and when he turned, he moved away from her. Not dramatically, just enough. Just the specific amount that meant something. She had approximately 3 seconds before she understood what was happening. 3 seconds is a long time, when your whole body goes very still. He spoke. The words were formal, measured, chosen carefully for a room full of people who would repeat them forever. He used the language of politics, alliance, restructuring, the future of the kingdom. Underneath the language was a simpler sentence. She heard that one too. The ritual blade came out. The bond did not snap. She had always thought, in the abstract way you think about things you believe will never happen to you, that it would snap. Something sudden and violent. Instead, it drained. Slowly. Like warmth leaving a room after the fire goes out. Like a tide going back. She stood very still, and felt herself become colder by degrees, and she thought, distantly, that this was an interesting thing to be feeling, and then she thought that she was going to have to deal with the fact that she was using the word interesting, because she could not yet use the real word. A woman was presented to the court. She was young. She was beautiful in the formal, careful way of women who have been trained to be presented. She looked miserable in the specific way of someone who also had no say. Seraphine recognized that look. She had worn it at her own bonding ceremony, 3 years ago, before she had learned to wear other things instead. The woman's name was Lysa Morn. She was the daughter of the Eastern Alliance. She was what the kingdom needed, apparently. She was what Calum had decided the kingdom needed, and Calum had never once in his life confused what he wanted with what he had decided. He did not look at Seraphine again. This was the cruelest thing he did all evening, and they both understood it without either of them saying so. Seraphine walked out of the great hall. She walked out under her own power. The ceremony required bare feet on stone. Old ritual, older than the court itself, and she felt every step on the cold marble, and she did not stumble once. She was aware that the room was watching her leave. She was aware that this moment would be told and retold for years. She made sure her back was straight. She made sure it looked like a choice. Outside, the night air hit her like cold water. She stopped in the courtyard and stood still, and let herself feel the full weight of what had just happened. Because she had learned a long time ago that refusing to feel things only delayed them, and made them worse when they finally arrived. She felt it, all of it, and then she breathed. And then she thought, what now? She did not leave the capital. This was her first decision, made quietly and alone in the dark of the courtyard. Everyone would expect her to leave. The graceful thing, the expected thing, the thing that caused the least disruption, was to take whatever settlement Calum offered and disappear somewhere quiet and let the court forget she had ever existed. She had been doing the expected thing for 3 years. She was done. She found a room at an inn in the merchant quarter. Small, clean, owned by an older she-wolf who asks no questions and charged fair prices. Seraphine paid with coin she had saved carefully over 3 years, small amounts from the household accounts, consistent, a little every month. She had saved it the way a woman saves something when some quiet part of her knows she might need to run. She had never admitted that to herself before. She admitted it now. Calum sent a letter 3 days later. Land, somewhere distant. A modest sum. Standard terms for a formal separation. She recognized the handwriting of the emissary, not his own. She turned the letter over in her hands without opening it. She put it back on the tray and sent it back the same way it had arrived, sealed and untouched. She did not feel triumphant about this. She felt tired. On the 4th day, someone knocked at her door. She had heard the footsteps on the stairs before the knock. She recognized them, without knowing why. She opened the door. The man from the edge of the hall stood in the corridor. He was taller than she had estimated. He held his hands at his sides, open, which meant something in wolf language. Nothing hidden, no aggression. He waited for her to speak first. She did not. He said his name was Alaric Vane. He said he was Alpha of the Northern Reach. He said she did not need to invite him in, and that he would say what he had to say from the corridor if she preferred. She stepped back. He entered. She made tea because it gave her hands something to do. They talked for an hour, not about Calum, not about the ceremony, about the Northern Reach, its politics, its structure, its people. He told her there was a seat on his council that had been empty for 14 months, because he had not found anyone worth sitting in it. He told her he had been watching her work at Ironspine Court for 2 years, and he named 3 specific decisions she had made in her capacity as an unofficial advisor to the king's household. Decisions she had been careful to make quietly, without credit, because the credit would have made Calum uncomfortable. She had not known anyone was paying attention. She looked at him with new eyes. He did not offer her pity. He did not offer her rescue. He offered her a job, which was the only thing she would have accepted. She told him she would think about it. He nodded, left his contact information, and said good evening. He was gone before she realized she had been testing him, and he had passed. She went north. The Northern Reach was different from the south in ways she felt before she could name. The air was cleaner and colder. The wolves here were older in their manner. Not in age, but in the way things are old when they have survived hard winters, instead of being kept warm by walls. They looked at her with curiosity, not pity. Nobody in the Northern Reach had been at the Ironspine ceremony. To them, she was simply a woman Alaric had brought north, and Alaric's judgment was not something they questioned lightly. She sat council within the first week. There was a border dispute between 2 subpacks, 3 southern families and 2 northern families, a line of territory that had been argued over for so long that the original cause had been buried under years of resentment and counterclaim. She read the records over 2 evenings. She sat with both parties on the 3rd day. On the 4th day she sat with them together. She found the thing beneath the thing, not the land itself, but a water source that ran under both territories, and the fear on both sides that the other would cut them off from it. She proposed a shared stewardship agreement. Both packs signed it in one session. Alaric's senior beta had been trying to resolve the same dispute for 6 months. Nobody made a large thing of this. They just started including her in the next meeting as a matter of course, and the one after that, and the one after that. She found she preferred it this way. She had spent 3 years being officially nothing while doing everything. Now she was officially something and could just do the work. She and Alaric developed a rhythm. He led by consensus and asked real questions, not the performance of listening but the actual thing. He would ask her something, and then he would be quiet, and he would wait for her full answer before forming his next thought. She found this disorienting in a way she could not immediately name. Until she named it, she was not used to being heard. She had lived so long in a house where she spoke carefully and was received selectively that she had learned to compress everything she said, to give only the parts she thought would be accepted, and keep the rest. She was unlearning this. It was slow and occasionally uncomfortable, like a muscle that had been kept still learning to move again. She was not ready to think about what else she might be feeling. She set it aside. She was practical about things like that. A letter arrived from Ironspine Court in her 3rd month north. She recognized Calum's handwriting on the outer seal. His own this time. Inside, The formal language of a king. The alliance with the Eastern families was under strain. The new bond was struggling. He used careful words that meant none of these things directly. He used words like consult and guidance and the kingdom's interest. At the very end, in language that was built entirely out of official phrases, so that no one could ever say he had written it plainly, he said, "Come home." She read it once. She folded it. She carried it to the fireplace in her private office and put it in herself, without ceremony or drama. The paper caught and was gone in under a minute. Alaric saw her do it. He had been standing in the open doorway with a report she had asked for. He said nothing. He simply crossed the room and placed the report on the desk and left. She appreciated this more than she had words for. The Northern Reach held its recognition right in the last month of the cold season. It was older than the Southern monarchy, older than the Alpha King title. It was not a bonding ceremony. It was not a marriage. It was something more specific and more permanent. The formal naming of a wolf as co-sovereign of the Northern Reach, equal in standing, not made of, sovereign alongside. The distinction mattered. Alaric had been careful about the distinction. Every pack member of the Northern Reach was present. Every visiting dignitary from the 3 neighboring territories attended. And standing near the back of the gathering, with a satchel of routine trade documents he had come north to deliver, was an ambassador from Ironspine Court. He had arrived 2 days early and had accepted the invitation to attend the rite as a courtesy to his host. The timing was not accidental. Alaric placed the crown on her head himself, iron and juniper. It was not decorative. It was not pretty in the way that court jewelry is made to be pretty. It was the kind of beautiful that belongs only to things built to last. He spoke the words of recognition in the old language. The translation was simple. What was always yours, named aloud at last. Her wolf rose. Not with the careful, monitored rise she had practiced for 3 years, always contained, always appropriate, always at the correct volume for the room. This was different. This was the feeling of something that had been held small for too long, finally allowed to take up the space it was always meant to occupy. She stood straight, and she breathed, and she felt it move through her, and she did not perform anything about it for the people watching. She let them see exactly what they were seeing. It had nothing to do with the crown. The crown was just the thing that happened at the same time. Calum came north 6 weeks later. He came alone. No delegation, no formal notice. He arrived at the gates in the early morning, with a single horse and a tired face, and asked for an audience. Seraphine was told while she was in the middle of a council session. She finished the session first. Then she had him shown to the meeting room. He looked older, not in years, in the specific way a person ages, when they have been wrong about something important, and have had time to understand the full size of their wrongness. He said the things he should have said years ago. She listened. She did not fill the silences. She let them sit, because she had learned that silence was not something that needed to be rescued. When he finished, he asked if there was a way back. She was quiet for a moment, not hesitating, just making sure she said the thing she actually meant. She said, "You broke something that does not reform." She said it without cruelty. She had no interest in cruelty. Cruelty required ongoing effort, and she had better things to do. She simply said it as a fact. The way you tell someone the direction they are walking is the wrong one. Not to hurt them, just because it is true and they should know. He left before noon. She did not watch him go. She found Alaric in the training yard, exactly where she expected him to be, doing exactly what she expected him to be doing. She stood beside him and watched the sparring without speaking for a while. The morning was cold and bright, and the yard smelled like pine and effort. After a while, she said something quiet. He turned his head and looked at her and responded, low and even, and she almost smiled. The conversation continued. The story did not need to follow it. Some things belonged to the people inside them.